Hi, it's Heather, and I'm so glad you're here. We've renamed our podcast Health, Harmony, and Heather to reflect my passion for enriching our perspectives on life by exploring social phenomena, the human condition, and our abilities to connect with ourselves, each other, and the planet. We'll talk about all forms of health, from the physical, mental, and spiritual, and we'll hear from experts that take us closer to living harmoniously. We will explore all things that lead us to our innermost truth, happiness, and freedom. Join me and take the ride. My next guest, Avery Hale Smith, was just 17 when she was invited to speak at the United Nations, awarded and honored for her dedication to women's empowerment and social activism through her volunteer work, organizing and distributing shoes to developing nations at the early age of just 12. Inspired by her family's extensive travels and time spent in nature throughout childhood, she developed a curiosity about the world at large and the world of entrepreneurship. Raised in the Bay Area, her global consciousness and love of nature found her way back home, and alongside her dad, as the CEO, that is Chief Experience Officer at Backroads. And she's on a mission to open up a world of possibilities and experiences to as many people as possible through the joys of active travel. And don't I know it, Avery, it is so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Heather, for the very kind intro. It's great to be here.
Well, it's a really exciting introduction because travel is so important. The I must travel. As a fashion designer, I was so lucky to be able to travel for my work at the very, early part of my career. And I really hung on to the fact that the I must travel. And it's such an important thing to do. And it's your life. And so I'm so thrilled to have you here so that we can share a love that we both have about the eye seeing the world and the soul being a part of that journey. And so I just want to start off about your family. You were born and raised in the Bay Area, as I mentioned, and you're the daughter of Tom Hale. He's the founder, president, and CEO of Backroads, which is, I want to say, the active travel company. Okay, there are many out there that talk about it, but Backroads to me is the active travel company. It's the founder, it's the pioneer, and I love, love, love the organization, as you know so much. That's why you're here. So I just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to start by saying, Heather, that I'm very excited to be here to, speak about our mutual love of travel. And you continue to be very kind in your opening, but I think, we have evolved. We've been around for over 45 years now and have evolved so much as a business, as a travel company. We've seen our guests continue to evolve in terms of their needs and their interests. And travel is I would say, an interesting industry to be in. It's constantly changing and evolving, and there's always a new trend. The thing for your listeners who don't know as much about Backroads, we are an active travel company, a luxury active travel company. And that's always been, one of the through lines of Backroads trips. We do biking, hiking, and multi-adventures. And I joined Backroads in an official capacity a few years ago in 2021. But of course, through the family connection, Backroads has always played a big role in my life.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit. The early part of the company, 45 years, you talk about, is an incredible history. What was it like growing up in that atmosphere? And tell me how that enriched you, because then you went on to do other things. And it really wasn't until college, traveling through India, that something sparked and changed in you. So I want to get up to there. So give us a little bit of what it was like growing up in the Bay Area with a dad like Tom, and he was forming early pioneering. I mean, biking was really what you pioneered at the early part of the company, and now it does so many things, and we'll get into all those trips. But give us a little bit of your background and bring us to India.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I feel very fortunate to have grown up in the Bay Area. As you know, a lot of people know about the Bay Area. Being active is a big part of life in the Bay Area. People are constantly out cycling and hiking, and you're surrounded by this natural beauty that I think I didn't probably appreciate growing up as much as I do now. But so I feel very fortunate to have grown up here, and very fortunate also to have been able to travel so much through my family and the connection to Backroads. And most of our trips growing up were Backroads trips. So was very used to traveling in an active way and getting familiar with biking and hiking from an early age. I will say when I was younger, I I saw people going to the beach for vacation or relaxing for vacation, and that wasn't something that we did as much. And now looking back on it, I'm just so incredibly grateful for the travel experiences that I did have, and kind of the way it opened my eyes to different cultures and different regions, and learning about the places we were going and connecting with the different people in the areas that we were traveling to. So had a great upbringing, very close with everyone in my family, but have always had a special relationship with my dad. But as far as his kind of connection to Backroads, how I viewed that as a young child, I think I always saw a lot of the hard work and discipline and focus that goes into owning and running your own business. But I didn't have, I couldn't grasp the full extent of that until I joined Backroads for myself. So anyways, fast forward through high school and college. In college, I had the opportunity, as you mentioned, to travel to India with one of my professors, where we studied globalization and sustainability. And it was a trip that really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. We were there for 6 weeks, and we had the opportunity to travel all around the country. So see very different regions, immerse ourselves in the communities that we were visiting, and learn about the different areas and the people. And I think I always had an appreciation for travel, but traveling to a place like India that I was so unfamiliar with, and had all of these new experiences, really kind of, I think, sparked an additional or a deeper love of travel for me.
Well, you were philanthropic as a young child. So there was something happening, at 12 years old, at 17 years old, you know what I mean, that your dad and your family and the travels gave you an insight. Maybe you saw things that a lot of people didn't see, but I feel like it must have triggered something in you from that 17-year-old, well, really 12-year-old, that said, hey, I can make a difference. These people need shoes and I can make a difference. And that's incredible. I'd love to talk a little bit about that. And then after being in college, you hit a place like India, and it must have struck back up that entrepreneurial spirit in you. Like, take us to that. Take us through that a little, Avery.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think growing up, there was always a part of me that had maybe a slight entrepreneurial spirit, or kind of, I was drawn to creative things a lot of the time. But in addition to me, founding this organization, which at the time I called Step by Step, and providing new and gently used shoes to communities, I think Backroads really enabled me to be able to do that in a bigger way, just because of the regions that we travel to and the trips that we run, I was much more easily able to connect with communities that were in need, versus if I had just been doing this on my own. So I really felt like I had the support of Backroads, in being able to identify which communities to donate to, even in establishing partnerships with other companies like the North Face or Keen Footwear, to kind of broaden the scope of what I was doing, and collect more shoes to donate. So I really do appreciate the doors that Backroads opened up for me, and recognize that that was a big part of everything I did at that age.
For sure. And I appreciate that. But you had a foundation, and you saw that you could use the foundation for something good. And that is not what everybody does. So that's really commendable to you. And so I want to talk a little bit about how, after working for a while outside of the family business, really your career, you pivoted, and I want to know, because you had this renewed sense of purpose. You were ignited by your commitment to making the world a better place through your international travel. So you pivoted, you left the corporate world. So how did it happen? Had Dad been nudging you, or did you call Dad and be like, yo, I'm coming home? Like, tell us how it happened.
All good questions. So it was definitely a long conversation. I think that it had been happening over many years. So I graduated from college, and I moved to Washington, D.C., and was working in the corporate world for quite a while in mostly sales and marketing. And then when COVID hit, I was actually working for an educational technology company where we were selling online learning solutions. And so when COVID hit and the pandemic happens, like everybody needs online learning solutions. So business was booming in the role that I was in at that point. And simultaneously, I was having these conversations with my dad and my family about what a difficult and challenging time it was for Backroads and the travel industry at large. And I mean, everyone was just getting decimated. And so that was sort of an interesting time for me to navigate and kind of figure out. I had known that I probably wanted to join Backroads in some capacity at some point later down the line. But I think COVID opened up this opportunity where it was a time of turmoil. There was a lot of change going on within the organization. And my dad and I spoke about how I could fit into that and really help. I think there was never any pressure put on me per se, but I felt maybe just a sense of obligation or duty and a little bit of guilt that I wasn't helping out and wasn't, trying to make things better in a really difficult time. So we had those conversations probably in the middle of 2020. I was able to spend a lot of time at home working remotely. So I came home to the Bay Area during COVID and we were going on bike rides and I was working the room over from my dad so I could hear all of these work calls going on. And we made that decision in mid 2020 and I officially joined Backroads at the beginning of 21.
Well, it's very exciting. I mean, really, because let's just talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments. I mean, you announced top travel trends for 2025. You expand to women's adventures, with more than 40 bucket list destinations. Backroads launches new women's adventure travel in 26 destinations across the globe. So, you are the leader in active travel today. And I just want to take a second before we go on to just talk about active travel. You mentioned that you were so blessed with it as a child. And I was one of the kids that went to visit my grandparents in Florida and hung out at the pool. And, by the time I was 14, I was mixing the baby oil and the iodine and myself, and that was, I was raised in the 70s and, it was really about Miami Beach and things like that. And because I was raised in the Berkshires, in the Hudson Valley region of New York State, the Berkshires, the Catskill Mountains, Berkshires of Massachusetts, I grew up outdoorsy like you, being out in the woods on bikes, late at night, scuffed up knees. It was all just a part of the game. Yep. I grew up skiing and doing all this active stuff and hiking and camping out like you didn't even think about it, sleeping under the stars, whatever it was. So, and I moved toward fashion. So I went away from, that and into from the country and all that and into this big city and fashion and Paris and Hong Kong, all that kind of stuff. So I was traveling, but I was traveling really seeing the world from an adventure point. And you have an itinerary, but you're seeing the space, you're seeing the place, you're meeting the people, you're engaging in the community. And I think that was the part that I had to put together when I started really active traveling again. Kilimanjaro climbing to 20,000 feet in Nepal, going to Patagonia and exploring that beautiful region of Argentina. Lots of trips that I've taken. I think what connected for me was because I had been able to travel for business and I got to meet so many people in business in those regions. And then when I stepped away from fashion and I started to get into nutrition and travel came back into it again, it really was about mixing the two. I want active travel. I want to do something fun for my vacation, but I need to meet the community. I need to be engrossed in the culture. So talk a little bit about that part, because that's the heart and soul of Backroads. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think you hit on so many of the critical things we're always thinking about when creating these trips and designing how the trips are going to flow and the itineraries. And at the heart of what we do is connection. And so, people talk a lot about cultural immersion and things like wellness. And a lot of it is a lot more surface level than I think how we think about it at Backroads. So on every trip, no matter what you're doing, whether it's hiking or biking or where you're traveling to, connection is really at the root of it, and experiencing the region you're in a really authentic, immersive way. And not just the region you're in, but the people that you're doing it with. So your fellow guests, as well as the leaders who are leading the trips and the people in the communities that you're visiting. And it's kind of the combination of all of those things is really our secret sauce. And you said something interesting. You said when you were growing up, you were this outdoorsy kid, and then later on, you had all of these kind of amazing travel experiences. I would say as a kid, I would not categorize myself as outdoorsy, and I still wouldn't even categorize myself as, outdoorsy. And I think that that's something that, many people who work at Backroads are, and many people who go on our Backroads trips are, but not everyone. And I think as I've gotten older, I've appreciated more and more being outdoors and the active nature of our trips, but understanding that, you don't need to be someone that's running ultra marathons every weekend or doing Ironmans and, these epic active things that I think sometimes people think about and are maybe intimidated about when they think active travel. And so, I love to go on hikes like anyone else. I love to do Pilates. I love to do yoga, but I'm not the person doing that ultra marathon. And you don't need to be doing those things in order to really enjoy and really get so much out of an active travel experience. And that's something that, I'm thinking a lot about, especially from kind of the storytelling perspective of active travel and what we're doing. And it's a really interesting thing to continue thinking about. So that's really top of mind for me.
That's fantastic. I think one of the pieces that I want to also mention for people that are interested in travel and interested in moving out of the same old thing. A lot of times people do the same old thing, or there's life shifts and changes. You might be empty nesters and your husband and you finally have some time to travel. You may have wanted to visit places and you have friends that don't like to travel. They like to go to the same old Disney World trip or whatever it may be. Backroads has something for everybody. And that's one of the things that I think is so incredible about what you offer, because I also want to mention to people, yes, there is something for everybody. We want you to move your body. I say that because I want everybody to move their body. Backroads want you to move your body. But just like Dad, there is no pressure. Right. There's our plan that if you decide not to go on the trek that day, you're in a beautiful place, you're in beautiful accommodations, and there are options within the plan. And the expert guides, they're so dedicated. The people that work at Backroads, they've worked there for years. I love my guides on my Backroads trips because they love the company they work for, and it shows through. So that's what I wanted to move to. The next thing is planning a trip. Is such a big deal. And so for a lot of people, they get stuck at, I would love to go to Italy and hike in the mountains, but like, how do I even begin? And working on European travel, I do retreats. It's hard. It's really hard to communicate with everybody over there. And this is not a huge gouging markup that Backroads is doing these trips. These are really affordable trips that are planned out by experts. So you can never go wrong. You will never go wrong. How many trips do you all offer, honestly, globally?
Oh gosh. I mean, thousands. We operate in over 40 countries, and we're continuing to, expand that list. And we're always looking for new places to go, new ways of doing active travel. So it's continuing to expand. But I mean, aside from, I talked about our secret sauce before. I think it's sort of two-pronged. It's our leaders who I can tell, I think hopefully helped create an amazing experience for you on the Women's Adventures trip that you participated in. It's our leaders who are these amazing people who have so much depth and warmth and character and experience. And then it's the people who plan the trip. So our trip development team, who are really responsible for creating these unbelievable and life-changing itineraries. And you're right, I think it's really intimidating for a lot of people and daunting for people who are busy and they're working hard and they have so much going on to have to plan a vacation for themselves when they're really supposed to just be able to unplug and unwind and relax. And so, that's at the core of our business. And I think it's, there's one element to travel that is, making some dinner reservations and walking through the cities you're in and staying at a nice hotel. But we're really trying to provide so much more than that with what we do and make sure that there are so many layers to the trip. If it's a, let's say, 5-night, 6-day adventure, and you're going through, let's say, the Dolomites, we want to make sure there's an element of course, unbelievable accommodations and unbelievable food, but also that cultural connection, that you're learning about the history of the region, that there's really ample time to connect with the people that you're doing it with. And of course, unbelievable routes where you're seeing the best that the region has to offer. So there's a lot that goes into it. But
it's why I partnered with you guys, because it was becoming impossible for me to plan European trips. Like, a one-off trip to Kili, of course I have to try, I have to vet the expedition company, so for me as kind of a side hustle, if you will, the travel and adventure thing, it's for the soul, it's for the healing. And then you guys launched women's. And so I want to talk about that a little, because you really created the women's travel division. And it wasn't that Backroads didn't have women. They had a lot of women and couples and things like that. But you saw a trend, and I saw the same trend. And I saw it throughout my tiny travel company compared to you guys as a big giant, in that pandemic was terrible. And then it started to open back up and people started to really want to travel. But there was a shift. You started to see, and I started to see, individual travelers, people that weren't coming as two, but one-offs, looking to meet people, looking to reach out. Talk about what you saw and why the women's division felt right for you and so important for you.
Yeah, well, I will start by saying, I'm so glad that you were able to experience one, Heather, so firsthand what that experience it can be like. But this has been one of our biggest and most immediate successes from the time that we launched. So, of course, as you mentioned, we've had women travelers for the past 45 years, but
I was one even before the women's trip.
Right, exactly. And so, getting women together, I think, creates this even deeper level of connection, and women who have shared experiences just by the fact that they're a woman, and getting them together. There's a social element to these trips. Of course, you're traveling with other like-minded travelers, and then, kind of tying back to the connection conversation we've been having, there's just this deeper level of connection. One of the remarkable things I think about these trips too is that over 60% of the guests going on these women's adventures are totally new to Backroads. So it could be that they've never done group travel before, they've never done active travel before, but I think women are really eager to and craving this level of connection, moving their body, this idea of wellness that we can talk about. But I think it's just kind of, we knew it was something that people were looking for, but I think all of us were honestly surprised by just the level of success that we saw from the get-go. And it's been really sweet to see too, I think, the types of people that we're getting on our trips. So there's definitely a lot of solo travelers. We're seeing that as a trend, but we're also seeing, multi-generational travelers, mothers going with their daughters, their sisters going together, or just friends. But it's been interesting to see how this is continuing to evolve. And, this coming year, or this year that we're in 2025, we're adding way more trips because we're seeing over 100% growth, and really thinking about where do women want to go, what's going to resonate with women. And it's actually been a little bit, well, maybe not surprising, but we've just seen that where women want to go is actually a little bit different sometimes from where our other guests want to go.
I want to talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about some of your, I guess, your most best-selling trips, like the ones that are the ringers that, just you can't take off. They don't let you. And then what's the difference? Some of the shit. Let's talk about the shift, because I want to get people, comfortable with the fact that because I will say, when you go on a Backroads website, it's a lot. There's so much, you know what I mean? And what I do at Heather Thompson Travel and Adventure now is I go through all the Backroads trip, and now I curate down 1 or 2 choices for you guys to come on with me. And so I kind of help you navigate that a little bit. Yeah. But the thing about it is, once you do choose the trip, the support going into the trip is second to none. And it's a big deal, packing lists and understanding weather, understanding altitude, these types of things that you're going to need. but you will never need anything on a Backroads trip because the team, they all have it figured out. They know what everybody forgets.
Right.
They know what people are going to need. So there's something really, really amazing in that. There's a comfort level in that's really important. So, but I want to, so give me that kind of like those ringer trips and then some of the new travel.
Sure, definitely. So, I mean, for forever, it's been France and Italy. Like those are the places that everybody wants to go, whether it's, Tuscany or the Dolomites or Provence, those have always been kind of our biggest regions with the most demand. But recently in the past couple of years, Croatia has just blown up, as I'm sure you've seen too. I think you can't get a more beautiful place in terms of riding along the coast and these epic climbs. And so that is
get some beach goers.
Exactly.
And Croatia.
Something for everyone. So Croatia has been really hot. But in terms of our women's adventures, the Camino de Santiago trip has just blown any kind of expectations or projections out of the water. I think women in particular are gravitating towards that trip because there's definitely a sense of journey on that trip, but this kind of pilgrimage element and this sort of spiritual element too, I think is attracting people. We're adding a lot more far-flung destinations too for women because it's seeming like women maybe are wanting to travel with Backroads to these areas where they might not have traveled on their own in the past.
Right. That's right.
We're adding Morocco and Nepal, and we have Bhutan and these epic areas that are like next level unbelievable, but are pretty hard to navigate on your own. So that's kind of the value that we're trying to bring. So it's, and all of those regions are popular amongst our guests, but their popularity amongst women has just kind of blown things out of the water, which has been great to see.
I think that's really spot on. And it really is a good segue kind of into the wellness world a little bit. And it's such a buzzword now. You've been in the wellness business for your whole life. I was in the wellness business. Even when I was a fashion designer, I was creating encouraging clothes that were supporting women and making them look and feel the best they could. And so the wellness, like the El Camino, for those of you who don't know it, can you tell them a little bit about it? You're the travel expert. Tell them a little bit about that trail so then we can kind of move into wellness and where it's a buzzword, but where it really counts with adventure travel. It's that mind, body, moving the legs, being silent. Like, talk about that a little.
Yeah, for sure. So the Camino de Santiago, for those that aren't familiar, is essentially Europe's oldest and I would say most well-known pilgrimage route. So it's been a pilgrimage site for, I think, over 1,000 years. And essentially we take our guests on parts of the Camino to allow them to experience that pilgrimage for themselves. And then of course we add in other elements like staying in beautiful accommodations and wonderful meals and cultural elements and immersive activities. But a lot of times people do the Camino on their own. It'll be a solo pilgrimage too. And so this is a different way of experiencing the Camino. And I think it's really special to be able to experience something like that is so there's so much history behind it with others who are trying to experience the same thing. So it's it shouldn't be really any surprise, I guess, that women have gravitated towards this and that people want to experience that. But hiking the Camino with a bunch of other badass women is kind of a next level experience that people are loving, which is great to see.
The connection I want to mention too with the women's groups, because what I found with my women's group, so my travel adventure changed a little bit from adventure travel right when the pandemic opened up to my pure freedom retreats, which is we went to one hotel and then we used the area. So there was activity within the area because people were a little bit nervous to travel. And so it was easier to keep them domestic. Initially, right. Pandemic first opened, we were doing more domestic travel. In fact, my trip with you was to Joshua Tree. I took a women's trip with you, and I'm sure that the parks in the United States have also rushed. I feel like they probably were a big uplift in sales for you once the pandemic opened. People wanted to explore our own country when we almost got
Oh my
locked in.
gosh.
We were like, holy cow, what have I not seen?
Completely.
Right?
It's, people checking stuff off the bucket list,
Yes,
and the US
exactly.
was hot in 2020 and
And what I
2021.
found with my retreats to these specific locations, which were women's retreats, and I had people coming that were sisters. I had mothers and daughters come, just like you said, and I had solo travelers come. And what was interesting is many of the women that came, sadly, hadn't had great experiences with women, with other women. And so they were nervous to
Yeah.
go on an all women's trip. And it was like the best part of it was because they were able to get out of that terror, get out of that bad trauma, and open up to women. And the friendships, the connections is another reason why I needed you guys. I have the same people buying out the trip. I
Right.
needed more space. I needed Backroads help. So the connections were so unbelievable. And I was so excited because I brought travelers obviously on the Joshua Tree trip, but then Backroads had travelers, and the connection to see what happened on the trip that had already been happening on mine. And that has to do with one thing. And that obviously it's all the travel and all the great things that we supply, but it has to do with women.
Yeah,
That's
completely.
who we are. And so just give us, like, as a female, as someone who travels but isn't like the top athlete, what made it so important? What's the most important message you want to give to women when it comes to stepping out and getting out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of not just women, but people in general can feel, as I mentioned earlier, intimidated by active travel or stepping outside of your comfort zone. And so for women specifically, I think getting a whole bunch of women together on these trips empowers women to see that they can really do it all. And so I think sometimes the active nature can be intimidating, whether it's the biking or the hiking or whatever activity they are doing on trip. And so to really realize that I can make this trip whatever I want it to be for myself, whatever you're looking to get out of it, whether it's, beating your personal record or doing as many miles a day as you possibly can, or just having authentic, deep connections and conversations with other women and the leaders on the trip and the people in the regions that you're visiting. I think my message to women would just be that, to embrace it and have confidence that you can do it. And do it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I think that's been really gratifying and rewarding to see women coming off of these trips, just like you, who, I would go so far as to say sometimes they're having life-changing experiences and are seeing the world in a whole new way, which is amazing.
It really, really is. I just love it so much. What are some of your favorite stories that you have from Backroads? Like, there's got to be one or two that stand out, because I do want to say the guides, you guys are for Backroads, they love what they do. They love the company they work for. They're so committed to you as travelers. And you can't top it. You can't top that. And so, like, it's always, they say, it starts from the head down. So, there's this head of community and connection, and you really feel that throughout. And so making the connections are almost impossible. So tell us some of your most joyful experiences or things that you saw on some of your trips that really stand out.
Well, in terms of, my own personal experiences on trips that have been, that stick out in my mind. I took my honeymoon on a Backroads trip. So that was amazing. I went with my husband to the Amalfi Coast, and it was just incredible. To be able to, we spent some time, just us, before that, before we joined up with the group, which was great. But I think when we say to people that we did group travel for a part of our honeymoon, people are surprised or curious about what that was like. And it was incredible.
Awesome.
We have a lot of people that go on their honeymoons on Backroads trips. And so that's a memory that for sure sticks out in my mind. But some of my favorite sort of stories or lores in terms of, our leaders and connections that are made on our trips, the biggest one I would say is our current head of leader development, as well as our former head of leader development. They were past leaders of Backroads trips. They both met their current husbands, partners on Backroads trips leading. They were both leaders. And I just think that's incredible. I mean,
I think I know one of them.
Do you?
I think because one of my guides, or maybe they're not married yet and I'm blowing the thing, but there's a boyfriend and girlfriend who met as guides, and they are, it's so great.
It happens all the time. I mean, we have so many who have gone on to get married and have families and, are either still in the Backroads world or off doing their own things, but it makes so much sense because it's this it's such an unique lifestyle. For starters, you're traveling all over the world and not a lot of people can relate. You don't have a home base all the time.
Right.
So
many of them don't even have homes. Like they don't have home addresses because they're really moving and they're chasing the adventure. They love it and they're youthful and they're excited, and that's the time to do it. Let me ask you, do you ever have any older guides that come back and say, like after retirement or something like that, like, I want to start guiding again, and can I guide trips? Do you have any older guides or people that have just been with the company?
Yeah. We do. So we have something that we call Leader for Life. And it essentially just means that if you've led Backroads trips in the past and you want to, let us know that you're available for maybe it's only one trip a year or 1 or 2 trips a year. And we have so many of those people who they can't unplug entirely from the Backroads community and that lifestyle, understandably. So we have plenty of those people. I mean, I mentioned that our former head of leader development, her husband, Paul, has led trips since for so many years, and he's led the most trips of any leader at Backroads. And he now has, 2 kids who I believe are approaching high school age, so he's, it's really been interesting and amazing to see that kind of journey, but it's not totally unique. I mean, there are so many leaders out there who have been around for decades.
I love that. You know how Saturday Night Live has the club about who's been on Saturday Night Live like 2 times,
yes.
3 times, 5 times? You're going to have to mimic Saturday Night
exactly.
Live. I love that. Your lifers. The 5,000 guided trip number. You made the 5K,
Exactly. No, it's so great to see.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that. So travel, really, no matter where you go. But I mean, Backroads, to me, I'm sure your dad is so proud to see where this company has gone, because Backroads is it's a Patagonia company. Like, you guys are on, you are on the right track for everything. You look at sustainability, you look at the trips, you care about the planet, you care about people. And so I love that. And that's why I am advocating for Backroads Travel. I am for your travel company, but I'm just advocating for travel. I'm advocating to get out there, go on Backroads when you listen to this podcast, look at all the trips that they have, start to dream, start to adventure. They're really within your reach. These are not trips that are astronomical. They really, and there's something for everybody. You can really afford to do this. You can't afford not to do this. And so if you haven't traveled yet and you've been nervous to, this is a really great place to start. If you're ready to get back into it, this is a really great place to start. And who else? Tell them, girl.
Thank you, Heather. That's, so kind of you. And it's amazing to see that you've had such great experiences on your trips, and especially knowing what a diverse travel background you have. You brought up earlier that, this idea of wellness is kind of a buzzword right now. And it is a buzzword. And I think sometimes when you think about wellness, people think, going to the spa for a facial or trying a new diet or kind of these more surface level things. And so when we think about wellness, we're really thinking about how can we take a holistic approach to wellness. And that's the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, it's the connection. And so as we hear all the time on the news right now, there's a loneliness epidemic, and AI is kind of infiltrating every part of our lives. And so for people to have the opportunity to disconnect from that and take a really intentional approach to the way they go about life, the way that they travel, the way that they see the world, and explore and travel under their own power, on their own 2 feet, on their bike, is just a next level experience, I think. And so our goal really is to open that up to as many people as we possibly can. And, continuing to listen to our guests and their needs and their priorities and their desires and their feedback. So I just really appreciate you, taking the time to not only experience our trips, but have this conversation as well.
Oh, well, the pleasure is all mine. That's what we do here at Health, Harmony, and Heather. We got to just keep people in the know. And, that's the other thing is sharing. And that's really what this podcast is also about. It's about sharing my knowledge, sharing the people that I meet, that I find inspirational, or opportunities or experiences that I've had or I've seen or I want to do, books I've read or I want to read, and it's all of that. So I really, really appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate what you stand for, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about it. And I really appreciate Tom.
So do I. I do too.
I really appreciate your dad, and I'm super grateful to him. And I know he must be really proud of himself, and he must be really proud of you, and he must be really proud of his wonderful organization. Tell people a little bit more about where they can access Backroads, and everything that you can tell them so that they can find you guys, no stops, pull out the stop.
Sure. Well, backroads.com, I think, is the best place to find a trip, book a trip, learn about the trips, and learn about what's offered, on social at Backroads Travel as well on Instagram. Hope that we can get you on another trip soon, Heather.
Yeah.
What's your next travel stop?
I'm going to Peru in March. So amazing. I'm off to Peru in March. I'm really excited, 12 days. And that's a trip, that's a personal trip. So I've been doing a lot of travel adventure trips on group travel. And so I'm going to fill back up some of my coffers and the things that I want to do. So the next trip that I'm going to plan with you guys for HT Travel Co. So everybody keep an eye out over at ht.com, also heatherthompson.com, because I will be offering select Backroads trips down the road. So always stop at Backroads first, but check me out, because I'm going to tell everybody here right now where I want to go next, and that is Bhutan.
You and me both.
Maybe you'll come, Avery. Maybe we can do this one together.
Never say never. That sounds amazing.
Never say never. So maybe we'll do that one, because I when I was a kid, friends of mine, they were older than me. They trekked in Bhutan, and it's a very difficult country in a good way. They protect their country. Mm-hmm. They don't let a lot of tourists in. They really are trying to preserve the unbelievable integrity of this spiritual place. And they went and they met their porter's son was young, and they brought him to America, and they gave him American education. And I befriended him because he didn't have any friends, and he was new to the country, and he didn't even speak the language, so to speak. So I would bring him around the Berkshires and show him stuff about America. And then guess what? We grew up, and now he's in the government in Bhutan.
Wow.
Always said to me, whenever you want to come and bring a group, I really have an invitation. But I'm going to tell you, it's still easier for me to go through Backroads.
I'm
going to do it with you.
Well, good. Well, I'm excited for that. It's an amazing place that I've never had the opportunity to go to. So it's
how we do it. Come on, Avery, work it on the girl. Okay, great. Well, everybody stay tuned, but go in there and get those fingers cracking and check out backroads.com. Don't you miss out on this one, let me tell you. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. Health, Harmony, and Heather will be back with a new episode coming at you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks for being here today. My true hope is that each podcast gives you some new perspective, new information, or connection into living that brings you closer to your freedom. And I can't wait to meet you here again for more practice next week.